And I should be live. So let me make sure that anyone who might be interested in joining us is able to join us. It looks like I am live. So welcome everyone who happens to be around right now. This is one of my unexpected live streams. I like to do that from time to time. So anyone who's interested in joining us can accommodate us, and I'll be up for a couple of minutes and participating in talking about some swords. In this case, we're going to talk about a specific sword. I just need to make sure that I have all of my media together. There we go. Okay. So recently I've had a couple of swords that have come my way. In fact, I'll showcase one of them right here, right now. This is a new type of gen from LKChen. This is done in the Qing Dynasty style, and it's a very broad blade. So this is broader than many type of Qing period blades. It's called the Yangshu Tiger Cutting Jin, and it's got a Tatsu style kind of monster guard on it. So we'll be reviewing that in the not too distant future. I've had actually several different gen that have come through my hands recently. There's been the Wudang Jin, the Discard Cutting Jin, and I think one more. The Scarlet Sunrise has come through as well. So, as a kind of preview, don't tell anyone, just between you and me, we're going to be doing a special reviewing kind of later period gen and trying to look at the types of tips that are on the different types of gen in particular. So that's something that I'm going to be looking at in the not too distant future. Also, I've had a couple of Albion come my way. So some of you may have seen the Albion Castellan, but also this one has just come to my doorstep just the other day, and it's quite pretty. So this is the Albion Mercenary, and you can see it's a kind of hand and a half sword, a little bit longer than hand and a half, I'd say. So it's just about proper longsword size, and it's a Type 15A blade. So it's nice and long and pointy. It's still pretty reinforced out towards the tip. So you could give someone a pretty good poke if you wanted to with this type of a blade, but it's still quite sharp. It's too cold for me to do any type of cutting, but eventually I'll be able to take it out and put it through the paces. There's a couple of things I'd like to test with that. As far as formal reviews are concerned, here, hang on, let me put this up. Oh. There we go. As far as formal reviews are concerned, I have a doll that needs to be reviewed formally, and I still have two of the lovely blades from Eric Östlund that needs to be reviewed formally. He's been very kind about letting me hold them for an extended period. Let's see who's around right now. Francisco Funari. Hello, Francisco. Hope you're having a great evening. So those will need to be taken care of for sure. My buddy says he cannot access the devices. All right. Well, hopefully we can have someone join us a little bit later in the evening. If not, we'll just do this on our own. So we have that going on, and then we have obviously the new offerings from Sword Is. So we looked at those briefly on a previous stream, I think, but I'll bring them back out to remind everyone of what we have. So the first one we have was a Hussar Saber. And again, this is done in the style of 17th century Polish Hussar Saber. And it's very close to everything that we need to get it looking really, really good. I would change this shape. I've talked to Alex a little bit about him possibly improving the shape and the suspension to get the scabbard looking really good. And then the blade itself is really quite nice looking for for the price. So this sword at less than $300 is a perfectly functional Hussar style saber, and really quite a good pickup. So not everything that I said sword is, but this is from Swordier. Not everything that Swordier offers, I think, is up to this standard, but they're getting there, and they have some more interesting projects that they're working on. They just released a great sword, a Zweihander, that's like $350, but it's huge. So this is definitely a company to continue to watch out for, in my opinion. They continue to have some pretty cool stuff that they're bringing to the market at just a wonderful price point. Now, something I didn't mention before. So recently, I just released a video talking about the how historically accurate a sword is or isn't. And this is a pretty good example of a sword that's not particularly historically accurate. So this is a falchion, and you can see that it has all of this scroll work on it that is not really consistent with anything historical. It's got this, leaf type hooked things that look kind of like an elf. It's got this pattern leather grip on it. And then if we look at the actual crossguard itself, it's got all of this little embossing on it. It says eternal on either side of it. There's a star, there's all of these loops, etc. So I mean, from a historical standpoint, like if I'm just grading this on the basis of how historically accurate it is, I'd give this probably a C. But to be honest, I think it all actually works together. Like this is one of those rare cases where I'd say that everything looks pretty good on the whole. Now, let's see if I can add a friend to the stage. Hang on one second. All right. Can you hear me, Mr. Gucci Katana?
I can. Are you hearing any feedback from me?
No, I think you're coming through A-okay. How am I coming through? Am I coming through weak or am I coming through light?
Very clearly.
All right, wonderful. Well, everyone, welcome to the stage.
Hello.
The dozens and dozens of my viewers, the literal 3 viewers that we have right now. It's fine. I'm recording this for posterity anyway. My good friend Gucci Katana, everyone who is watching this in the future, make sure you go and subscribe to his channel. He has sword reviews on his channel as well. I decided to bring him on here because he knows a lot about Japanese swords, probably a lot more than I do. In fact, is that your original there, or is that your new one? Your Ryan sword?
This is the replica of my aunt.
Okay.
The original is the one behind me.
Yeah. So part of the reason that I wanted to bring you on here, and we won't make it super long, is I was just mentioning that I had a whole bunch of new swords that have come my way recently, but one of the ones that came through is ones that you and I have looked at a whole bunch before, but the first time I've seen it in the flesh. So it is the Tatsu Katana. Now, have you taken one or two of our friends have Tatsu Katanas of their own, so I wasn't sure if you've seen pictures of one up close and personal to see one out in the wild, or if you've just looked at the promo shots before.
I can't say that I've seen it up close.
Yeah.
I may have. I think our friend out in Princeton, I think he may have shown it on camera, but it's all a blur. But most of my up close has been the LKChen page.
So I'm going to display this now. Going into it, both Gucci Katana and I have had many conversations about this particular sword offline before, so we have kind of strong opinions of the sword. I'm going to bring it out, and I'd like him to take a look at it and offer his opinion looking at it, with me being able to manipulate it and show different sides of the camera. It's not going to be perfect. The webcam is not as strong as a proper 4K monitor or anything like that, but I will say when it came over to me, I was surprised by several things, and I'd like his opinion. So let me see. So for comparison, here is my other just kind of bog standard Daito that I have. This is my Ryan sword, and again, just plain black Ito. This is a $200 something sword from. Did I say Ryan sword? This is Ronin Katana. So there's a Ronin Katana. Put this out of the way, and here we go. So I'm going to do a pass first, and then we can start talking about it. So we have Saya coming at you.
Pretty standard glossy black.
Mm-hmm. So we have, let me see if I can get some better light going on over here.
I mean, that looks like a pretty bog standard Kurigata and Sageo. Almost looks identical to the Ryan sword that I'm holding.
I was going to say, right?
Although I've obviously had mine redone, as you can see with the cord, but looks pretty standard. The Fuchi looks like it does on the website. Yeah, I mean, it looks like it does on the website, which is a good thing. The diamonds are pretty good, although for a $400 sword, I would hope they would be.
Yeah. So this is something that's important, is that, again, the Japanese sword community is quite different than what LKChen normally operates in, the Chinese sword community. And so the expectations are different as to what you're getting for your price.
Indeed.
Let's see if I can get some of the Suba action in here.
It looks...
Hang on. This is what I will do. I will pretend I'm...
fancy lighting.
Yeah. I'm not sure how much of that's coming through. Is it focusing? It probably wants to focus further away.
It's focusing a little further away, but I can kind of make out that it's a relatively clean casting job.
Yeah.
Although the dragon is like from a distance in the lighting, barely visible. I only know it's a dragon because I've seen the photos.
You've seen exactly what it is, right? I don't know that I can get the other side. Let me see if I can, and then we'll pull the blade out. I'm trying to knock. Does that look a little bit better from that side, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like they cleaned up the surface that actually touches the cast.
So something a little interesting to me, and I think that this is coming through, is I was expecting just kind of a standard black iron guard, and it really has this kind of reddish hue to it. I don't know how much that's coming through. So I'm not sure what they've done, if it's like electroplating or what have you. There's no signs of it having worn off or like abraded or anything coming through. So I'm not sure how they've colored it to get this. It's not quite copper. It's just kind of like very nicely ruddy iron that the Suba, and let me see if there's any of that in there might be just the slightest amount of that in the Fujikashira, but it's pretty much just the Suba that has this kind of reddish coloration to it. Oh, my light. There we go. So you can see a little bit of that.
Yeah, I can see the like the reddish oxidization. Yeah. Not really oxidization, but it's like that iron color, you know.
Right. Exactly. It looks almost like unprocessed iron.
Yeah.
So, before I pull it apart, as you probably saw on the server, the Kurigata came to me. So part of the reason this came to me is this one was a return. So I knew going into it that there were issues with it. So the Kurigata had been knocked off. So I don't know if that came from the factory knocked off, or if someone was playing with it, or if it got knocked off in transit. So at some point it got knocked off. I have since repaired it. It seems to be fine after I've glued it. The Sageo looks kind of weird. I don't know if you like it. It is tied off, but it's tied off with these little tassels. I personally haven't really seen that before. Have you seen these little frayed ends like that?
Hold on. So Cult of Athena had a brand called, or they have a brand called Iron Tiger Forge. And their Sageo ends were so bad. I don't know how well you can see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Sugeo ends were so bad that I had to tie it off because they were ripping themselves.
They were fraying themselves apart.
Yeah, they were already fraying. This sword has a multitude of issues. If I ever get around to reviewing it, I have nothing good to say about most of the furniture. But I have seen this, yes. Okay. It's usually really bad. Like, I think it's badly cut cord that they're using.
So, I mean, it's deliberate in this case from what I can see, just because I don't know if it'll show up on camera, but there's a little tie and then there's this like troll hair poof.
That's how mine came.
I think it looks ugly. Again, like you suggest, maybe it's going to fray and come apart. I personally, if it were up to me, I would modify that. I would fix that. But I don't know. Maybe there is a tradition somewhere at some period where that was popular. If they can demonstrate that, then I'll give them a pass. Right now, that's for them to show me that, oh, no, this is, this is from the Mino district, and we definitely, all the samurai were doing that at that point because it was very popular. So right now, to me, it just looks cheap and ugly, unfortunately. Now, before I show off the blade and the hamon, I do want to show this one thing. This is actually something I'm going to bring over to the microphone. Can you hear that?
That sounds terrible.
Yeah. It's a lateral rattle. It's not much of an up and down rattle, but from side to side, there is definitely play in the saya. And when it was still in the packaging, I heard a little bonking around, and I couldn't figure out what, swords don't usually make a lot of bonking when they're packed up. At first, I thought it was the kurigata that had come off, but after fiddling with it, I'm like, oh, this sword actually is loose within the saya. Now, it has a very good fit at the habaki. It will not come out at the habaki. It's got pretty much perfect, so that I can just pop it out and then it'll have a nice draw. But for whatever reason, the rest of it has a lot of space. And by a lot of space, I mean, it's probably, on the order of like 4 or 5 millimeters. But that's something that I don't think, I'm trying to think of all the Japanese swords I've handled before. I can't remember a saya that had that amount of rattle to it.
This Ryan sword isn't really that tight in the saya, but the lateral rattle is it's audible, but it's so minor that it's like I wouldn't be worried. That is a lot.
No, and so that's a critique that I'm going to have to. So I mean, again, this is my little $200 one. Nothing there, but if I were trying to use this as a practice sword, if I were trying to practice EI, and I have this in my belt, I can't have my blade, clanking around in the saya all the time. I don't see that as acceptable fitment. And that's really weird because, again, like you said, this isn't like some really crazy space age scabbard. And Long Chuan should know how to fit a saya to a katana blade that's not anything. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe this blade is enough of a non-standard blade that you do need a custom saya, or maybe they didn't take the time. Maybe they just put it in a standard saya, and that's where the difference is. So I don't know. But to me, this warrants further investigation, and I'd want to look at another one. Okay, so I'll pop it out. And I'm not sure how well this is going to read on camera. Is the hamon picking up?
A little bit. You might need to change the angle more.
This
edge
is where
you a little bit.
All right, there we go. So the pattern is kind of small, but the vibrance of the hamon I'm pretty happy with. It's actually it stands out pretty well on the sword.
I'm going to pull out an unfair comparison.
Sure.
So here's a Koto, late Koto, early Shinto period. Tonto, that's pretty large. And the Hamon is, as you can tell from the video, very bright.
Yeah.
Very, I'd say lively is a very good descriptor.
Yeah.
It's completely unfair to compare I'd say this is at least on its first polish antique to a Longchuan sword. But if the Hamon is at least vibrant, like you say, I think that's a good start for their first product.
Let me see if I can. I don't know if I can pull out my Ronin for comparison. Again, like that's part of the reason I wanted to have the other one here is because my lighting and camera situation will make it more difficult to compare.
I mean, the Ronin, I can already see the lines on that very clearly.
So the line is apparent, but the actual polish is not there. The polish is it basically just makes it look like the same grade of steel as the rest of the body. Whereas if I'm looking at the polish that's on the Tatsu, it's very clear to me that these are two types of polish that they have on it. The border is pretty different. I don't know if you can see it there a little bit better. Where
I can. It's very evident that it's two different colors.
Right. The rest of it is very nicely mirror polished. The bohi is well executed. Obviously, there's not any waver going on in it. It's not the best termination that I've ever had. You know, it gets to the end. I've seen them sharper. I've definitely seen them worse. So I'm okay. I'm okay with that. The Yokote is fine, and it's got pretty minimal standard Torisori from what I can see.
So this is a bit of another unfair comparison, but here is a Mino Tachi from the Koto era, and I don't know how good the lighting will pick it up, but the termination, I feel like this should be the standard for termination on the Kisaki and general parts. So I don't know how well that's picking up. Wow, that Tachi is wild. Yes, it is. This is
it's always a good day when your Tachi comes out, in my opinion.
Yep.
So I'm happy to see that. And I didn't show it before, but the Habaki is plain, but it's perfectly executed. There's no sign that it's forced or, you know, I've seen some very ham-fisted fits at the Motohaba to try and get these swords into the Habaki. The Seppa looks good.
They can be pretty rough,
Yeah, there's no sign of errant hammer marks. The way that the Mune is seating it is the Mune Machi is good. The Ha Machi is nestled in there pretty well. It's not doesn't have any special cutouts or anything like that for where the He is. So let me see if I can get some.
And I mean, even from this angle alone, in the shading though, I can tell that the bohi is actually very well done.
Yeah.
It's very clean.
And you can see the Suba a little bit more. The Manuki are a little bit big, and the upper Manuki is on the finger side. Is that correct? So it has two. It has the upper Manuki and the lower Manuki are both on the finger side rather than the palm side.
Yeah. So like on my antique, for example, they put the Manuki on the right hand and but this is kind of a shorter handle Tachi.
Yeah.
Well, Gunto really.
Yeah.
But even then, like if I were to put let me take this back. If I was supposed to use both hands on it, goes where my palm is.
Yeah, see, I think I'm used to having them in the palm, but see, look, so on the upper one, if I put my palm there, it's going to end up being on the finger side instead. which
Weird.
to me seems backwards. I'm used to them being inside of the palm instead of the on the finger end. So it feels just like it's not uncomfortable, but to me it just feels very slightly out of position when I'm holding it.
So this Iron Tiger Forge, I have very similar Manuki, where it's the Manuki is on the finger side for me on this sword.
Mm-hmm.
So, but this is a weird ska. So
yeah. So, this is one I'd almost want Matt Jensen to weigh in on, because he I know has strong opinions on the fact that we have so few options when it comes to custom fittings. The sword itself is, in my opinion, nothing special. The blade is well executed, but there's nothing that distinguishes it from hundreds of other katana out there. The saya has serious issues that you and I could discuss. The ska seems to be okay. The Samagawa looks good. The Manuki are a little funny, but the Itamaki is tight. Like, I can't really budge the wrap. They're all in good position here. But the fact of the matter is, he took the time to design his own Fuchikashira and Suba. And that's basically something that, like, what, maybe there's 2 or 3 makers that are out there that are doing their custom stuff, unless you want to spend, I don't even know how much. Like, that's the thing. You could buy a $300 katana and you could buy a $2,000 katana, and they're still going to be using the exact same Suba on them. So that may actually be something worth considering if it's only a single option. And most people who are buying katana, they want a whole suite of options. They want to be able to choose everything. And LKChen has said, no, you don't get that. You don't get your custom katana maker. You get the one katana. And I picked a kind of boring katana for you. But it is different than what everyone else is doing out there. And that is kind of interesting to me. So, like, he has never had the problem following the beat of his own drum. And he's decided, like, no, I'm just going to carve the Suba from the get-go and produce it. And, like, when I pulled it out and this red was shining at me, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I've handled a lot of katana before. I haven't seen that sticking out at me before. That's kind of cool. So I thought that was kind of neat, even if the rest of the sword doesn't really inspire a lot.
So the only similar thing that I have, it's not going to come up very well on camera, but this very thick guard that came standard with Kai Gunto, I have just a tiny bit of color. It's not going to focus very well, but I do have a tiny bit of color, and this is the only sword I've ever had that's had anything similar to that. Other than that, it's been like Fuchikashira, that when they get worn down, they show a different color, but it's never been a Suba coming with a different color. Like
that.
That's actually interesting to me, if that's normal.
Yeah. So just like you said, like, I have the real big custom I ordered from Hanban, and it showed up to me, and even though it's black, it's already has the borders where the brass is showing through, where it's worn away either from the bluing or the painting. So, and you just kind of accept that. You just have to understand that if you're buying those type of parts, that's what they're going to suffer. And for this to come, and for it to be so shiny and iron, and have, at the end of the day, what is a pretty cool dragon on it, it's very interesting. I don't know that he has plans to expand his katana line. If he wanted to, he could really offer something kind of cool and interesting that's really not seen on the market. For right now, I think it's perfectly serviceable. It might be very slightly overpriced, and obviously I have some complaints, but for me, the complaints are pretty much only in the scabbard, as I mentioned before. But I think that the issue is that it's kind of a very specific taste, and if you don't happen to go for that taste, then you're going to be it's going to be a tall ask for you to pick this up compared to the huge number of selections you have of katana out there. What's your thoughts on it?
I mean, you're right. For me personally, I struggle to find a reason to actually go out and buy production katanas. As you know, I've had a very, very bad time with off-the-shelf production swords. So you have to really either be making something and releasing it that is actually interesting and well reviewed, because I don't buy swords brand new.
Yeah.
The last time I did was this, and this was a disaster. So either it has to be something truly unique, or it needs to be something that's very well executed. I think, yeah, like the people in your chat say, you have to be offering something in this flooded market that is truly unique, and LK almost did that. Almost. Like, I don't want to give them too much shade because it's their first katana.
Sure.
But they almost made something unique. I think if they do ever, for whatever reason, make another Japanese sword, they should not do an uchi katana. They should do a tachi, or even a higher end wakizashi.
Yes. Yeah. There and see, so I've seen people ask me about that before, where they'll say, "Hey, look at the price of this katana, and then look at how much they're charging for a waki or even a tanto. Like, what's the deal with that?" And it's just an availability thing. They'll make 10 katana for every one wakizashi they make, or one tanto, and it's economy of scale, where you can afford to reduce the price of even a 3-foot long blade compared to a 1-foot long blade, just because you're producing them on that large a basis, that many batches. And I think you're absolutely right. It would be, if this is his katana and then he decides to do something else, knowing him, he'll probably do something ridiculously big. He'll probably do like a nagamaki or something like that.
We can only hope.
Yeah. It would be nice to actually have, a real legitimate production nagamaki on the market. That would be really fun. But I think that you're correct that trying to go into one of the less represented corners of the Japanese market would be something for him to visit in the future. Obviously, he keeps his own counsel. We can all suggest it. Mr. Chen, if you're listening in, the sword is good. It needs improvement to the saya. If you want to sell even more swords, perhaps consider one of the many other types of Japanese blade that are out there, but which do not get as much love as the uchi katana, which is pretty overrepresented in the sword market.
Or, since LK does make pole arms, if you are listening, Mr. Chen, please, I beg you, make a good yari. Whether it's a socket yari, or, I mean, it could be any kind of yari. As long as it is a good yari, I may buy it off the bat. Because we have way too many uchi katana. Just too many. We have too many uchi katana that are labeled as tachi because they're furniture.
Yeah.
And we have less actual tachi being made. But if you were to make a yari, I think that would be pretty good. I've always wanted to get the hansha and the batwing hansha.
Yeah.
But I think if there was a yari, I think I'd be sold on that.
Yeah,
but no, I do agree. I think the uchi katana market is too flooded, and you really do need to do something unique to stand out.
You either have to cut your profit to nothing so that everyone wants to buy it because of the price, or you have to just make something that's really, really out there, which is difficult because, think about it. The katana, the uchi katana market includes things like anime swords, which are already pushing the envelope of like what is the design. So you're competing against, people are going to look, even if they're not going to buy, they're going to see what people are making at like $15,000, super high-end custom smith, And then they're also going to be looking at like crazy cartoon designs that still fall under katana. And so at the end of the day, if you just make a completely functional, completely cromulent, but pedestrian warrior's sword, it's going to get lost in the shuffle a bit, which is a shame to a degree. I mean, it's like if someone just came and said, "Here, have this, have the sword," I'd be very happy, assuming that the saya was appropriately taken care of for the sword. But I do think it's a bit of a tall ask for everyone to come and try and pick it out when they have just so many options available, which is something that's rare for LKChen, because LKChen is really quite good in that almost all the swords that he's making, things like the Persian shamshir, things like the rapiers, he's operating in spheres where he has literally no competition, or the competition is just so terrible that what his offerings are produced, he just blows them completely out of the water. And this is a step where that's not really the case, where he has plenty of other swords that will measure themselves against him quite competitively. And it's much harder to show off the fact that you do have a good sword at the end of the day.
Yes.
All right, let me see if there's anything that we missed in here before we sign off. Is it a Hanban sword? Gucci points out that this is the Tatsu from LKChen. Parker says, from a practical perspective, katana is such a crowded space. Yep. Blindy says, don't judge me, but I'm not going to lie. I kind of want some Musha swords because of how they look aesthetically, even if they're not the best for functional swords per se. I mean, I don't... No one's going to knock you for your aesthetics. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are some people who prefer aesthetics over performance. And I will say I used to be elitist towards performance side, but I can understand why people prefer the aesthetics. It's when you're buying a sword, if you're not a practitioner, you want a sword that when you look at it, you're happy that you bought it, and that in looking at it makes you happy. So I understand that logic. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I definitely have swords that I've picked up and I'm like, ooh, these look beautiful. And then when I handle them, I'm like, I wish that they handled as good as they looked. But
that's how I thought with this sword. I saw the kind of tapered handle, and I saw that Mitsu Domoe pattern that even Matt Jensen was attracted to in his review. But looks were deceiving. This was very much a deceptive sword.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
So you have to be careful when you're buying based on looks.
Micah says, for the price, I kind of wish the lines on the LKChen katana would flow a bit better, but you can't expect that for the price. I'm not sure exactly which lines you were looking at. Obviously, there are things that could be improved upon. This is not the most affordable katana, and it's true that there are certain makers that are producing a whole lot of sword at this price point. So depending on who you're comparing it to, you could argue that you could find better work out there. As we mentioned before, he is one of the only ones doing using custom fittings. So that would probably be, to me, like if someone said, well, why am I buying this sword instead of another? I could buy a sword for $100 less that's going to give me everything I want. And I wouldn't argue with that. I'll be like, sure, absolutely. To me, the reason I would probably pick this up is if I perhaps like the Hamon, but more importantly, because I like the dragon motif, because I literally am not going to find that particular dragon, this particular red Iron Suba, anywhere else. And it's a well-executed sword that's going to be fine. And if I want that, then yeah, I'm going to pick it up from him. But that's a kind of narrow market that he's appealing to. Blindy says, I completely understand. That's why I've really been happy with the two romance of men swords I have. One of them is very fantastical, even though it's meant to be functional. All right. Well, I'm glad that Romance of Men is doing so well. I haven't had the chance to work with any of their stuff yet. A bunch of my buddies have been enjoying Romance of Men. So far, they seem to be pretty good for their price point. So maybe I'll check them out sometime in the near future. All right, Gucci, anything you want to say before we punch out?
Your point about people making a lot of sword for that price point, I think even within LK's own catalog, if you're willing to branch out from what is considered a traditional katana, I mean, for the price point, you could be getting a Chongdao or the Miao Dao.
Sure.
And I feel that maybe this is sacrilege to say, but I think in the terms of katana-like weapons, those are better for the price point because not only are you getting something unique, but you're just getting a larger blade. So, and they do look pretty good, especially the newer models.
Yeah. So my buddy Just a Bug, who practices Jedakum, the Korean system of longsword combat, he had talked to me for a while about the measurements and trying to figure out about the size of the crossbowman Dao, which is one of the Dan Dao that LKChen uses. And that's the thing, is since these are all derived from Japanese swords originally, there's a lot of cross usability. So if you're interested in having a sword that you can practice with, and just like you said, you want something that's different, that's not just katana number 7, and you want a lot of sword for your cash, looking into these long sabers of China that LKChen produces, and he's the only one who's doing them well. Definitely checking out the Silver Swallow Miao Dao, the Imperial Guard Chung Dao, or the Ming Crossbowman Dao. These are all swords in excess of 85 centimeters of blade length. They're the size of small Nodachi, large Okatana, what have you, and it's a lot of sword for the price. And they're really cool. They're a lot of fun to work with. Awesome. Okay, well, that's all for me for right now. I want to thank Gucci Katana so much for coming over on such short notice. Hopefully we'll have more collaborations in the future. It's always nice to have another sword friend on the channel. But this was two guys crazy Thursday night rambling, looking at the LKChen Tatsu Katana up close and personal. Lot of good, couple of points that need to be fixed. And if you want a dragon on your Suba, this is the sword for you. Okay? Until next time, guys. Take care.
Have a good one.